All right, welcome back to all of you. Sorry for the delay. These are intense days, I can imagine, the European Commission. So it's now my honor and pleasure to welcome EU Commissioner Nicolas Schmit. Thank you for joining us today to our end of the year Future Work Inclusive Growth Digital Dialogues. So I will now ask you a few questions, and then we'll let the audience participate with the Slido. If there are questions, they can, just use the code FOV in Slido and post those questions, and I will bring them to you. So my first question, let's dive into the most juicy plate. Tomorrow you will release a package of Commission's initiatives to protect workers in the platform economy. So what should we expect? And in particular, I mean, the Commission is somehow attempting to reconcile three non-necessarily compatible constraints: the compelling urgency to increase protection for platform workers, the need to keep platform business models viable, and the boundaries of EU competences on labor markets vis-a-vis member states. So how do you manage to address all this?
Well, I think that these constraints, as you call them, are absolutely compatible. On the increasing protection for platform workers, I think that first the competence issue. Let's immediately respond to that. I think we have a competence for working conditions for all workers, so including platform workers. So this is not an issue. We have a solid legal base. Some contested our legal base for minimum wage, and well, we got it right, I think. But here, nobody ever, at least I have not heard that somebody put into question our competence to regulate the working conditions of platform workers. So this issue is clearly not a constraint, or at least not incompatible with what we are doing. On platform, I think we are not, our intention is not to limit the development of platforms. It's not killing platforms. It's not reducing the labor force in platforms. The point is, platforms is now a very thriving business model, which I consider to respond to a strong demand. Otherwise, they would not thrive. That's a new demand in our society, and that's fine. But this demand and this market and this business model on which platform were built on, and with the technology which allow that, cannot go on the basis of low social standards. There is no argument for saying, well, we have the classical economy where you have to respect social standards, social protection, the worker has rights. But then we have the platform economy. This is a new business model, and there are no social rights, or different social rights, or low social rights. This is not acceptable for two reasons. First, for social equity, it's not equitable, it's not fair. And second, it's not fair because it's not compatible with fair competition. You cannot say this is a business model based on platforms, and they have no obligation or low obligation in social areas. And this is a more classical business model. I always give the example. You have the delivery services for your food, for instance. Bringing your, you do not like anymore to go to the supermarket, and you ask the delivery to bring your food to your home. Fine, it's perfect for me. But why should the guy bringing your food or your items to your home be treated, socially speaking, very differently from the guy working in the supermarket? First, that's unfair between these two jobs. And second, it's unfair because the platform and the supermarket, they would be working in a very different competitive environment, and this is against fair competition. So I think this, what you consider not to be necessarily compatible, I consider it perfectly compatible.
Okay, so I mean, then I mean, like we should expect something, very interesting tomorrow. I mean, like I will not push you to reveal anything ahead of it. I mean, unless you want to. I mean, like, but I mean, like, so I mean, but my guess, and then I come to the second question because I want to broaden up a little bit this discussion. My guess is also that the pandemic has emphasized the need to intervene. I mean, it was already in the plans before, but you actually were pushed also to act also because of what we saw during the pandemic, in which platform workers were really exposed to many risks without protection. But I mean, that also applies to other issues, like, for example, telework. I mean, this is very uncertain what is going to happen with it. We'll have hybrid work frameworks. Who is going to gain? Who is going to lose from it? My question is, how do you see this future? I mean, do you see the Commission having also a strong action in that space? For example, for the right to disconnect or the telework framework, what the Commission will do?
First, we have seen during the pandemic that telework, which was relatively marginal, has developed extremely rapidly and at a very large scale. So this was due to the pandemic, and I must say it was great luck for all of us because we could go on working. A lot of sectors, a lot of activities could go on. Otherwise, they would have been closed. So I think in that sense, telework was really a very positive solution for the economy. Otherwise, the drop in the economy would have been much more dramatic. But telework, certainly there is an agreement between social partners on telework that was concluded in 2000 and I don't remember, forget always the date.
2002.
Yeah, 2000, nearly 20 years ago. So that was the beginning of telework. And then telework expanded very slowly. Now it's much more practiced in many areas. And certainly I invited, by the way, the social partners to take up the agreement of 2002 and to look at it and to improve it. And I hope that this is an issue where social partners could really find good solutions, and the Commission certainly would then look if on the basis of Article 155, I think, we could take it up and transform it into a European regulation or directive, whatever. So this is clear. We have to define better telework and also the rights of telework and the frame. Now, I noticed there's the exceptional situation of the pandemic. Probably people have to work very much in telework again, given the situation. This should perhaps not become the absolute normality, because we feel also that people are a bit reluctant to say, well, I mainly work on telework. I would also to have a better balance. I agree to be 2 days a week at home, but I have to find a new balance. And this is up to social partners to negotiate in the companies, depending on the companies and on the wishes of the workforce. Then linked to that is the right to disconnect. This is not just for telework, but it's certainly emphasized by telework. Now, we have a report by the European Parliament. There's a strong demand by the unions in Europe. There are laws in some member states. I just had a meeting, that's why I came late, with the Portuguese minister, labor minister, and Portugal introduced the right to disconnect recently, and she explained it just to me very successfully. And I think this has to become a right at European level. It's not logic that Portuguese, French, and Spanish and Belgian workers have the right to disconnect, and many other workers in Europe would not have. And this is related also to working conditions. And that's why now we are studying how we can establish this European right to disconnect, leaving a large margin for implementation to member states and especially to social to social partners. But it is absolutely clear that this right to disconnect is indispensable, because we see that with the new economy, with the IT very much present everywhere, well, we are facing also some difficulties, burnout, stress, all these difficult health problems multiply, which is bad for persons, obviously very bad, but it's bad also for companies. It's bad for productivity. It's bad for our social protection system. So I think we have to be reasonable here and say, well, people are not robots. People need also from time to time just to be disconnected, to do something else, to rest. And that's why this right to disconnect is a very important right, and we certainly will deal before the end of this mandate with this issue.
Thank you. So it seems that you are indeed, I mean, very, very active. A lot of things on your plate, but in general, I think these initiatives have a lot of overlaps with everything that the Commission is doing in the digital space. For example, the Commission is also very active in the space of artificial intelligence regulation. The recently proposed AI Act attempts to tame high-risk technologies. But any kind of AI, in my view, even the best possible one, may alter the relationship between employers and employees. Even like a perfectly unbiased AI, could imply constant monitoring affecting the well-being of workers. So my question is that, what is your thinking about AI in the workplace? Do you plan to complement the other initiatives like the AI Act with further initiatives which are more specific to protect really workers from the bad use, let's say, of technology?
Well, again, AI offers a lot of important new opportunities in the economy, in many sectors, in medicine, hospitals. AI can be really in many areas a big game changer. But as always, technology can also be abused, or there can be abuses, and therefore there has been already some measures taken on also putting AI into a framework. That's the AI Act, which was presented by Commissioner Vestager and Breton, where there are already some aspects, protective aspects. Now, especially between consumers or buyers and users of AI. The issue you are referring to are the management, human resource management through AI. And certainly that might be helpful, that might be useful in some aspects. And therefore we started now with the platform, with what we are presenting tomorrow on the platform. There is a strong element of AI, because algorithms are managing the workforce of platforms. So they are deciding a lot of things affecting directly those who are working on these platforms. And therefore there has to be at least first transparency. What are the basic features of the algorithms used? People should know that. This should be disclosed. Should not be a secret, with aspects like discrimination, non-discrimination, and so on, which are absolutely important aspects in general terms, which are, by the way, regulated in other important acts. But this is something we have introduced in the platform directive. The second one is obviously that AI is not just in platform. AI becomes more and more used also in the general human resource management. And what applies to platforms should apply everywhere. And this is the next step. Machines, this is about the relationship between humans and machines. And for instance, in the platform proposal, we say that everybody should have the right, if there is a conflict, if there is a need for explanation, if there is a need for justification, well, it's not with my algorithms I should discuss. I should discuss with a human. So it's not the machine, which is my interlocutor, it's the human. So, and here, this is an important aspect, and this was put into the directive, and this should apply to all, to the entire world of work. If artificial intelligence is more and more used, well, we should see how this relationship between the machine and algorithms and humans are organized, and the rights of persons towards the machines. But at the end, machines are always depending on somebody. Somebody is coding them, somebody is feeding them, although there is machine learning and so on, but at the end, somebody is there. And that this contact with some real person is certainly indispensable. So this obliges us to reflect a lot on this new evolution on AI. Again, we are not against AI, but we have this new technology to put it into a more human framework.
Well, thank you. I mean, like, it's very interesting. I used to think, you know, about the role of policymaking on platform workers. How can we extend, let's say, protections that are in the traditional world of platform work? But what you're saying is that you are also kind of reversing the logic. You will first, you know, go ahead protecting platform workers from artificial intelligence, from the misuse of artificial intelligence in that context, and then see whether this could be extended also outside the online platform work, which is a very interesting reverse logic. Now, my last question, and then I also will give a little bit the floor to Slido, but I would like just to you know, have more a broad perspective. What do you think are the next challenges, really, from a policy making perspective? There are many things that we see, you know, I mean, like adverse demographic trends, labor markets participation, the upskilling of the workforce, you know, the great resignation phenomenon. What do you see as the major challenges in the long term from your perspective?
Well, as you mentioned it, obviously there is a demographic challenge for Europe. We will have. I am not a believer in the scarcity of work. I do not believe that we will end up and work will be. We will have a world without work. I'm not believing in that. I think that we will have a problem of enough people in the labor market. This is what, in my view, is the major issue for Europe. So how can we tackle this demographic issue? Certainly here technology can help us, and robotization, AI, and so on can help Europe to bridge this demographic challenge, because what at the end is important is productivity, also to finance our social protection systems. Productivity is key. So this is my first answer. We have to still have a strong economy and especially high levels of productivity, because we will run out of labor force. A country like Germany, all the forecasts do not say we will have massive unemployment because technology will eat up all the jobs. No, the main issue in Germany is now we will have a scarcity of labor force. So the issue of immigration is obviously also part of that. The second one is how can we put more people in the labor market? We still have unemployed, but they are out of the labor market because skills matches, because they are discriminated, because they have the wrong skills. So I think we have to develop a major skilling effort, also to organize the transitions from one sector to another, from one technology to another, with the Green Deal being also a very high driving force in this changing economic environment. So I think skilling, certainly that's a very important issue. Tomorrow we will present also 2 instruments for reskilling and upskilling, because this is a priority. Well, and I would say my last, because you mentioned great resignation, and we have seen now that we have a lot of people who ask, well, why should I finally work in this sector? Why should I go back to work? Or this feeling that goes together with the pandemic, and which is some kind of a new mindset or psychological distress also. And here I think what is important, we have to come back to fair working conditions, which means better fair wages. People have to understand if they work, they get a fair wage, they can make a fair living out of it. And that's what we said yesterday about the minimum wage, because otherwise we will have this divide in our society, and where more and more people say, well, why should I work? And that could create this great resignation. And I think these are big challenges, very close to technological change, the Green Deal, but I think they can be resolved. They are not impossible to resolve. We can do it. We have to have the political will to do it.
Well, thank you very much. So indeed, I mean, like big challenges for which inclusiveness is probably, both the challenge itself, but also the part of the answer, if I understand correctly what you're saying. I mean, like building a more inclusive workplace, I mean, it can help address many of them. So now let me just read a few of the questions that we received. Of course, there are many. I will just read a few of them, and then I'll let you answer which one you think. I mean, you can. So the first one from Tom Sharpen here at Bruegel. How can teleworkers be protected from invasive new technologies that monitor their behavior? A second one from Michael Freitag. We fully agree with treating similar services in similar way. But how to capture the diversity of platform work in one single legal instrument? It's emphasizing the fact that indeed, I mean, platforms are very different from each other, so it's difficult to have like one uniform framework. Then Scott Marcus, we have a new pillar and the recommendation that seek to protect non-traditional employees and the self-employed. What further needs will this measure deal with? And finally, the measures that I suppose that will be adopted tomorrow. And finally, from Estrella Gomez Herrera, how can EU regulation be coordinated with regulation in other countries? Digital labor markets are mostly indeed transnational, so it's an additional challenge if you want. So if you want to pick up on any of these hints, please.
Well, on telework and the control of behavior through artificial intelligence, well, I think this is what I said. We have to create legal frameworks for the use of artificial intelligence, up to which point telework can be controlled. We have, by the way, on the GDPR, the personal individual protection or data protection. We have some elements which can be used already today. But I think this is an issue if we do not want to have, I'm a bit provocative, Chinese circumstances, where I heard this morning that now the Chinese journalists, they get into their phone a special app which controls exactly what they are doing. If we do not want that to millions of workers, we have to put limits on how behaviors are controlled, which does not mean that there can be at a certain level some control on the results of the work, but there has to be clear limits here in this context. On the diversity of platform, I agree. Platforms are very diverse. What we have done applies to all platforms, but certainly more to the on-location platforms than to the online platforms, because it's the on-location platform where the classification of workers is much more pronounced. the other platforms, well, in most cases, people are really not employed, but we offer a procedure. You know, we offer to member states a procedure, and this procedure can be used to check the status of workers on any platform. We know that there's diversity, but we want to check what is the status of the worker on this platform. On non-traditional employment and self-employment. Well, first, we do not want to create a new category, which would be between the employer and the employee and the self-employed, because what that would just have as a consequence that, well, if the intermediate category is more favorable in terms of social protection, or I mean on cost of social protection, well, everybody would switch to this category. So we do not want that. And I must say no, or more or less no. I'm prudent, I'm cautious. More or less no member state asked for this. So that's why we said it's either worker or self-employed. And self-employment, I'm not against self-employed. And I consider also that platform can hire and, or not hire, as can use self-employed people. That's not the issue. They can absolutely do that. But then they have to really have self-employed people and not bogus self-employed, where people are called self-employed, but finally they are absolutely subordinated to the platform and become, through that, they become a worker. But there is one other issue on which I have no real control, because this is not in my competence. That's how self-employed, real self-employed are protected. What are their rights? What are their social protections? And in many member states, the self-employed, I mean, the real self-employed are not very much or badly protected. And this is an issue which has to be discussed at European level, but mainly at national level, as we have no real competence in that area. Now, on yes, transnational digital labor market and transnational, this is a new dimension we should think of, because when we are talking about remote working, we think that some person lives 50 kilometers away and works for the company he normally joined every day, and then he stays at home or work. No, if you can work for the company 50 kilometers, you can also work for a company which is 500 kilometers or 5,000 kilometers away. That's technology. And this is an issue we have to look at. And this is already happening. When you have the big platforms where not the online platforms, well, there you are in competition maybe with people from India who are very skilled and for different work in IT or architecture or whatever. And this is something which can only be resolved partially also at a global level. ILO should have a look at that, and I think they talking to the Director General, he does it. It's not easy, but this is a new dimension. Indeed, the digital labor markets are global, and we have also to find global responses and global securities for global digital markets. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And I think this brings us really to the end of this. It was very short, but extremely insightful. So thank you very much for kindly being available, especially in this moment in which you're super busy. I think, personally, I'm very happy that the European Union will take a more and more important role in this. I agree with the fact that there is a need to be present to protect workers. And so thank you again. It's a very exciting historical moment, and good luck for tomorrow. And for us, I just would like to remind to everybody who is connected that we will have a third panel at 5:15 on artificial intelligence in the workplace. So we'll have a deep dive on the use of technology. So please come back in approximately 45 minutes, a little bit less than that, because it's also going to be very interesting. Once again, thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you. And
bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.